look, I think that a lot of people have tuned into this, one, because they're interested in the book, but they're also interested in Mo Rocca, the man. So
nice.
Let's start by talking about where you are. Where are you sitting right now?
I am in my apartment in the West Village in Manhattan. And I've been here, like most people, I've been, sheltering and I've been at home a lot. But I think you and I both have been able to go on assignment mostly by car. And that's been a nice relief to be able to do our jobs, not just at home, but on the road and just to get out once in a while. That's been very nice.
You know, you're in New York now, but you grew up near me. I'm in Washington, D.C., and you grew up in Bethesda. What were you like as a kid? Like, where did all this come from?
Well, so I guess my media diet, because my food diet was way too high on sugar and carbs, I think, which is why I was very hyperactive as a kid and taught myself gymnastics in the backyard of our house in Bethesda. But my media diet was basically Broadway cast albums, television shows, definitely, and the World Book Encyclopedia. Those were like the 1974 World Book Encyclopedia, which still lines my bedroom over there, one room over. And I would come home pretty much every afternoon after elementary school and junior high and lie on my stomach on the red family room carpet and just page through that 1974 World Book Encyclopedia. I loved the facts in brief so much. We were a World Book family, not a Britannica family. No judgment here, but we were World Book.
We were World Book too, another thing you and I have in common. The very last Mobituary in your book is also a dedication to your dad. Tell us about that Mobituary, because it's one of my favorites in the book.
Well, thanks for asking. So my father, late in life, around the same age that I am now, I'm now 51, took up the trumpet, and you can see it's right there hanging on my wall, the trumpet that he played. And it was just such an act of faith and love to do this, because he did it. It was something he had played as a boy that he had stopped playing because life interfered. He went into the army, he got married, he had 3 kids, started a small business. But this is something that he held on to and had told my mother he wished that he had kept playing and wanted to play again. And so one Christmas in the mid-70s, she went to a pawn shop down in DC, you'd think it was the 1930s, and she bought him a trumpet, which every day in the morning and in the evening, in the morning he'd do a half hour of scales, working on his embouchure, how his lips fit around the mouthpiece, and playing Dixieland jazz at night for an hour in the basement when I'd roller skate around him while he was playing.
Was he good?
He did become good, but he knew that he was not going to become Louis Armstrong because he was starting so late in life. But he did it because he loved to do it. And I tell that story in the book because that really sums up my father, I think, somebody who was just extraordinarily optimistic and buoyant and big-hearted and tried to impress on me and my brothers to do things for the love of it, to just make sure that we, it's not always easy to find what you love, to tap into that and to go for it. But that was kind of his essence.
So he must have been very proud of you. You went on to Harvard, where you were president of Hasty Pudding, putting on theatricals and getting into showbiz yourself. And if anybody wants to, they can still find videos of Mo playing in drag on Hasty Pudding. You haven't been able to get rid of those yet, have you?
I'm scrubbing. No. I just wish I looked better in drag.
What'd you get from doing Hasty Pudding? Because everybody, it's kind of legendary. People always hear about it.
What I got from it is, well, Harvard kind of had, and maybe it's changed now, but sort of an old-fashioned curriculum. You couldn't major in drama at the time. Now I think you can, but it was pretty old-fashioned in terms of what you could major in. So in order to do, and that sort of trickled down even into the extracurriculars. You had to really show initiative and be a self-starter. So the Hasty Pudding show was not run by the university. It was all student run. It was supported on the tickets that we sold. It's a very old, it's the oldest college theater organization, I guess, in the country, maybe the world. But so the show was student written. We would then go and hire professionals based on box office receipts, like a scenic designer, a choreographer, and a director. But I think that what I got out of it is this idea of doing it yourself, rather than having something university led where there was, where they would sort of take care of everything and just kind of cast us in it. And I think that was a good experience.
And obviously it made you very comfortable performing. And Carolyn, I'm not going to go back over them. Carolyn went over some of the amazing things that you did before coming to CBS Sunday Morning, but because you're so talented, you sing, you dance, you do comedy, I always wondered, why did you want to be a Sunday Morning correspondent like me? And I have none of those talents, by the way. I can't do anything else. Why did you want to do this?
Well, I think there's more overlap with us than you may realize beyond our suburban Maryland roots, which is, I don't want to sound too precious, but we love to tell stories. And there are not a lot of places where you get to 1 week tell a story about food, the next week tell a story about an obscure president, the next week do a profile of a painter, and then if you want to do something on current events, which I'm actually sort of less keen on than all the other things. So it is, I've always said that doing Sunday Morning is like going back to college and taking only electives, which I kind of wish I'd done the first time. It's like the variety pack of cereals that I loved growing up with. Like, you're not always in the mood for, Special K. You want the Sugar Smack, sometimes the Fruit Loops. No one wants the Special K. That's the one that gets left behind.
Everybody wants Fruit Loops, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've done a few car trips. What's it been like from your point of view to work as a journalist in this pandemic? We're lucky. We have not had to do what our colleagues have had to do, which is cover this terrible pandemic day in, day out. We have not been in the streets with this incredible Black Lives Matter, but we have been trying to provide interesting things that people can think of to get away from it all a little bit, even though you and I have both done stories, I think, that relate directly to the pandemic. But what's it been like working for you, and what's travel like now?
Well, first, like the creative side of it, what I have found so interesting is sort of finding stories that I think of as 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? Because we don't want to just be escapist, right? We don't want to, because that would be, as they say, sort of tone deaf, I think. But we also don't, Sunday Morning, that's not really the mission, to be sort of on the nose about stuff. So one of the first trips I made really shortly after the shelter-in-place orders came down was I drove to New Hampshire and back in one day to go visit a really charming couple who make jigsaw puzzles, because jigsaw puzzles really exploded during the Depression. People were making their own. It was a way for people to keep, mass numbers of unemployed people, also to keep themselves entertained. And that felt like a good sort of pandemic, almost not adjacent story, but 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so that was kind of cool. I did think, to be perfectly morbid here, my God, this is a lot to drive from New York to New Hampshire and back and do a whole piece in one day. And this would be the strangest way to die, doing like a piece on jigsaw puzzles. That would sort of be peak Sunday Morning. But to bring it full circle, the last couple of days, and this did involve a hotel stay, I went back to New Hampshire to do a piece on President Franklin Pierce, because I love doing stories about crappy presidents. And he was like a really, really bad president, like second or third from the bottom. The rankings are always changing. But I brought my mother with me, because my mother lives upstairs. And I don't know if it was against CVS policy, but I brought my mother with me. And as soon as we got in the car, it was the first time she'd been in a moving vehicle since the pandemic begun. She has gone out for little walks around the block, but it was like the last scene in Shawshank Redemption. She was like, it was like a jailbreak for her. And we went to a McDonald's drive-thru. And my mother's from Colombia, and I'm not going to tell you how old she was, but she was born before the stock market crashed. Let's just say that, like the one way back. And when we went through the McDonald's drive-thru, you would have thought that I brought her to the Ritz in Paris. I mean, she was freaking out. So if anyone out there is trapped at home and we can do this to raise money for BookHampton, I will take you to a McDonald's drive-thru. I will wear a mask and a shield and goggles.